Welcome to Whova's Event Insider Series. My name is Marisa, and I'm your host. Our Event Insider sessions invite experienced event professionals from a variety of backgrounds to offer their tips and insights on the event management industry. Today's discussion covers how to create an engaging hybrid convention featuring special guest Matt Liistro, the founder of Credit Admiral Software and the organizer of the annual CreditCon event. If you're interested in viewing more content for event organizers, subscribe to our channel where you can see more interviews with top event professionals and new content on the latest event industry trends. Now let's get into the discussion. Matt, I would like to thank you for taking the time to be a part of this interview and for sharing your experiences with other organizers. And to begin, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your organization?
My name is Matt Liistro. I am the organizer and promoter for the CreditCon convention. CreditCon is the largest domestic credit convention in the country, attended by the likes of TransUnion, Equifax, the Credit Data Industry Association, FICO, VantageScore, Microsoft. You get the idea. And it's a large convention, so it has lots of different facets. We have done that convention twice now with Whova. We did it in 2020 on a completely virtual event, and then we did it again in 2021 with Whova on a hybrid event.
Could you share a little bit more about the hybrid event and how that went for you?
I did love the 2020 event because it was strictly virtual, and Whova is a very cheap app compared to an actual physical event. And so the virtual turned out to be a great profit margin versus the hybrid event. Whova with the virtual was still a much smaller cost in the overall budget. And so, the amount of tickets we sold to the people coming in virtually was exceptionally profitable versus the physical attendees, where we had to worry about lots of things for the physical attendees: food, snacks, coffee, all kinds of other hard costs for physical attendees. But adding the virtual aspect it wasn't pure profit, but it wasn't too far from it. The cost of Whova was very small. It wasn't very hard to integrate at all, and it just gave us more profitability with all those virtual tickets.
Awesome. That's some really great advice right off the bat. You mentioned earlier that your conference is really large. I'm curious, what was the breakdown in numbers of virtual versus in-person attendees for this year's conference?
We had 85% in person and 15% virtual. So I think we were lucky in the timing that we had our conference. Our conference was the first week of June, or June 7th, 8th, and 9th in 2021. And the timing was really good for us. We really hit a nice sweet spot in between the real cases going down for COVID before the Delta variant spike came into play. And people really wanted to get out and go to a convention. So we had some real positive attendance numbers, but still 15% virtual gave us the ability and the confidence to put the show on. That no matter what happened, we offered people, listen, if there's some issue, there's some problem, you can switch at any time to the virtual ticket. And that really helped us sell a lot of tickets because people knew they had the flexibility to come virtually or to come physically. So even though we did ultimately get a lot of people in the door, bodies in the door, I think the virtual aspect really helped us sell a lot more tickets.
So if most of your attendees attended the event in person, were most of your speakers present on site as well?
We only did physical in-person speakers. We had a couple of speakers who couldn't make it or I should say couldn't make it, had COVID restrictions in travel and therefore weren't coming to the event. So we had the option of trying to pipe those speakers in by Zoom. I made the decision to not do that. I was a little worried about trying to, with a Zoom connection on the big screen, and then having people watch it, and the problems with technology there of, can you hear the speaker? Do we have it piped in correctly? And is the connection good enough from the venue? It's one thing to broadcast out. That's not so hard. But if you have a speaker coming in and there's a stutter or something else, I wasn't really willing to risk that. So for our convention, we didn't have any virtual speakers. And let me talk about that for a second, because when we're broadcasting out, I'm sure it's somewhere along there people experience hiccups in the transmission. I'm sure they did at some point in time. So that really wasn't an issue for us because we offered them and said, listen, if there's a problem with the technology, we will have a replay available. And so I think it was 2 days after the event or 3 days after the event, we put up the video so people could watch the replay. And so, that quelled anybody. I didn't even hear about anything from the hybrid event because we told them up front that if there was any issues, they could come back and rewatch it. Now, one of the things that I did is we made our rewatch window very small. And I did that for the completely virtual event too, because I didn't want people to have the thought that, hey, let me not go to the event while it's live. I'll just go and watch it when I can on the replay. And I tried to discourage that because we wanted the participation of the people watching live so they could come in and ask questions.
That seems like it was a really smart way to balance the needs of your virtual attendees with the goal of encouraging engagement also. So was there any particular strategy you employed to promote your event and attract more attendees this year?
Right on our purchase page, I put a video of my smiling face telling people my message, that we're not trying to be a super spreader event. So, we're going to put this event on, we're going to have it. Some people are ready to come back out. That doesn't mean that you are, you may be, you may not be. There's people are different. Some people are ready to come out now. Some people won't be ready for 6 months. Some people won't be ready for a year, and that's okay. There's not a problem with that. We're here to accommodate those who are ready and those who aren't ready. And that's why we did the hybrid event. And so getting that message out there that you can come in person or you can come virtually or you can switch at any time from one to the other was really important, in letting people know that they had the flexibility to come or to attend virtually. That was really, really good marketing for us. It really reflected well upon our brand that we were doing that for people. Obviously, it's a little difficult because you're trying to plan for food and how many bags do you have at the convention, the personnel you need to manage everything. But it really was the right thing to do, and it was really well perceived. It really elevated our brand and gave people the motivation to go ahead and buy a ticket.
Could you tell me a little bit more about your team? Did you have any additional staffing for the hybrid event?
We had a team of, I'm going to call it 5 people plus 1 photographer and 1 audio video person. So we had 1 AV guy running the everything AV and microphones and all that, 1 photographer running around taking pictures. And then I had myself, my wife, my personal assistant, and 2 other volunteers from the show. And, there's always a rush to the registration desk the first day. So a lot of people the registration day, I guess I'm counting myself, but I didn't do a whole lot. I mostly ran around and did fun optic things with attendees. So, my wife was pretty much in charge of taking care of the venue and making sure the food and everything was there. My assistant was making sure that all the speakers got there on time, everything else. We had the 2 other people managing pretty much the registration booth, making sure any problems were taken care of over there. And that was it. In hindsight, it probably would have liked 1 or 2 more people. We tended to try and help out with the AV person, giving him another body to put on the camera all the time. And I think in hindsight, he's only 1 person. We probably should have had a second person for him just to man the camera. That's because I liked when the camera, pans out or pans around versus just one steady shot the whole time. That's just my own personal preference. So I think we could have made it better by having more camera work done or having someone devoted to that. But it really didn't take that much. As you can tell, I didn't even mention having 1 person for the hybrid event because we didn't. We just had someone go check it once in a while and see how those leaderboard is doing and how the photos are going. And it just takes care of itself.
Wow, so you really put together such a successful and large event with a relatively small team. Would you say running the hybrid event was more difficult? Could you talk a little bit more about what managing the hybrid aspect was like?
I mean, we had an AV professional there to do the recording, and all he did was take an output off the board, his mixer board, and plug it into the laptop, and the laptop used that as the camera and broadcast. And literally, what I did to make it, maybe this will make it a little clearer, easier. We had a lot of people speaking throughout the day, And in Whova, we just put the same Zoom link for every session. So each day had its own Zoom link. And so people didn't have to log out and log into another session. You just stayed in your one video the whole time. But then all we did was plug that camera in, put it into that Zoom link, hit start, and we just let it go. Honestly, it didn't make it any more complicated than that. Yes, we broke for lunch. We served people lunch for an hour, and the Zoom people were staring at a blank podium for that hour, but it's okay. Who cares? When they come back, they're still going to hear some of the room noise. What we did for the audio is we put a microphone out by one of the speakers so that not only would they hear the speaker through the speaker who was talking, but they also heard some of the background noise from the room. And that was just the genius of our AV person who said, hey, this is how we want to do it. We want to use the microphone from the podium when the speaker when they're speaking, but we also want to feed in a little bit of noise over here, which is going to pick up some of the background noise in the room to give them a real in-person type experience. But that was all the setup of the AV person. I mean, literally, we turned it on in the morning and I turned it off at the end of the night. I told Zoom to automatically record it. I was done. It really wasn't. Don't make it any harder than it is. It's not. It's really quite easy.
Thanks, Matt. That's really great to hear, and I bet it will really help put some other organizers at ease. I know a common concern with hybrid events can be creating an inclusive experience for remote and on-site attendees both. So did you do anything special for your remote attendees so that they wouldn't feel isolated during the event?
We had, we sent out notices to people. We let them know what was going on. The one thing that we really did for the virtual attendees versus the physical attendees is we made sure that they got the same things that the physical attendees did. Meaning, if you were there physically, you could go from booth to booth to booth and visit each exhibitor and talk to them and gather their trinkets and handouts. But if you were virtual, you couldn't do that. So what we did is we used a medium flat rate box from the Postal Service. It was $15.50 to ship it anywhere in the US. And we filled it with everything from all the exhibitors, all the giveaways. And we mailed it to them. Now, we didn't do that till after the event. And we did that because, again, the flexibility that we had, we said, hey, you can come physically or virtually. So we didn't want to send to a virtual person and have them show up. And we didn't want to not send to a physical person when they wound up coming virtually. So we reconciled right after the event. And within a couple of days of the event ending, we were mailing people their convention boxes. So they had all the material from the event. And it was key that we did that really quickly because you don't want them to get it a couple of weeks later, have forgotten about the event. We want them to get it pretty quickly. And so we tried to make sure they were included and felt included because they were getting the same materials and the same things that the people who were there were getting. Yeah, we utilized the sponsor of the app. So everybody, even if they were physical, was using the app. They were using the app to see what was going on, to see the map of the place, to communicate back and forth. And so with the sponsors, we had our sponsors in there, so they were rotating. So we had 3 sponsors of the event, and their banner would rotate across the app. And I think they really appreciated that because everybody, virtual or physical, people were using that app. They were using it to communicate, to navigate, to see the schedule. We were pushing notifications through the app to them all the time. Hey, we're coming back from the break. Come back into the room. Hey, we're going to get started. The yoga's going tomorrow morning. We were utilizing the in-app messaging, so people were using it, and then the sponsors were getting a lot of exposure with those banner ads running on the app.
Thanks for sharing those details, Matt. So would you say you were able to facilitate good engagement throughout the event?
When we did it completely virtually, oh my gosh, the engagement through the app was through the roof. I think we had 4,300-ish messages between people for the event, just because people were just communicating and gathering and getting in the groups. And with the hybrid event, certainly we didn't attain those numbers because a lot more people were there physically, but we still had a lot of people from the event posting pictures. And then we had people responding with pictures from home of what they were doing and what they were eating versus what the convention goers were eating. And we had a lot of nice interaction back and forth.
That's great to hear. It sounds like you all had a lot of fun with the app at the event, and I'm glad it worked well for your sponsors and for your attendees.
And listen, we were going to do an event app anyway. I mean, you want to have an event app so people can follow,
Right.
so they can see it on their phone, they can see the schedule, they can see the map. We load up those the speaker slide decks so people can click on it and see the presentation. Now, some speakers are particular about that. Some don't want the slide deck published in the app until after they've spoken, so that people can't skip ahead to see what they're going to be covering or saying or see the answers to questions. And so there's a little bit of planning there. When do we make that slide deck available in the app? But people really do like the ability that they can go right in the app, click on it, and see the presentation, download it, and it's all right there.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your experience with that. And just to move on a little bit, could you tell us generally about any unexpected challenges you faced with the hybrid event?
Of the two, the virtual event turned out to be a whole lot simpler. I was really worried about the virtual event with technology, but because I was able to do the virtual event from our office space where we had a great internet connection and I have lots of technology here, the virtual event went off pretty much without a hitch. It was really quite good, and our expenses for that were so much lower than the physical event. The physical event, we're trying to do events, we're trying to have staff, we're trying to get people doing things. And so of the two, I was more wary of the virtual event, but it was a whole lot more profitable. The physical event every year has its own challenges with trying to make sure, hey, so-and-so missed their flight. What can we do for them? Hey, I just heard about your event. I missed the first day, but I'd still like to come. What can we do? The physical event just has a whole lot of more nuances that need to get taken care of. Challenges, the challenges, I'd say, we're really trying to keep up with everything. I think if I do it again, we probably should have added one, maybe two more people to our staff. We ran into some things like trying to help the AV person manage the camera all the time. And so we probably should have had one person just on that job. We probably could use one or two more bodies at the physical event to make things go a little smoother. But you always look back and criticize yourself and say, what could I have done better? Oh, we should have been on top of that before it happened. So there's always something in hindsight you beat yourself up over, but really nothing for the online, for the virtual attendees, because that was really quite simple.
And I bet a lot of organizers would agree that the on-site logistics can pose some of the biggest challenges sometimes. Were there any mistakes that you made that you'd like to help other organizers avoid?
One piece of advice that I have for other organizers is to try and negotiate your internet connection with your event long in advance, hopefully at the contract or booking time. What I found is that in previous years, when we've tried to add an internet connection, it can be very expensive. In the beginning of 2020, when things went south, we tried to add an internet connection to our event, and the event wanted to charge us $6,000 to add that internet line, which was, of course, prohibitive. But I have found that if you negotiate that in your contract, you can usually get one hardline internet that you can use for broadcasting, and that'll work just fine. So you do need to be careful about that. You want to try and get your internet connection in your contract to get the best terms. Otherwise, you may pay through the nose for that internet connection in order to be able to do a hybrid. But for our 2021 event, we had negotiated it in the contract, so it was no additional cost at all. And that made things a whole lot smoother.
Is there any secret to that negotiation?
No, I wish I could say there was some magic thing to it, but we just asked for it and they gave it to us. I think it cost them next to nothing. And so if it was a component of getting the contract, I think they just put it in there.
Yeah.
And we had the same thing in Vegas this year. We just made sure we asked for it up front, and they gave us a hard line. And I think we're 2020 or 1010 or 2020, something like that. But definitely good enough for a broadcast line, not what you're used to for your office or your home. It's not going to be that kind of speed, but it's going to be certainly good enough to broadcast out. And they included that at no problem at all.
Got it. That's great to hear. And with that, I'm curious how you chose to stream the live sessions to the virtual audience. Could you explain that a bit?
And what we did is we used a Zoom interface, although if you were in Hoover, you wouldn't have known it. I tried Cisco and Zoom both in our first virtual event. I liked Zoom a little bit better because I thought it's more, people are more familiar with it, but nobody knows what it is. because for our virtual attendees, they were just going to Whova, clicking on a session, and then the video pops out. They don't know it's Zoom. They don't know what it is. They just know they're watching a video from their computer, their tablet, or their phone, their smartphone, and they're watching the event on Whova. Now, we used Zoom as the backbone engine to drive that video, which is fine. There's many different services you could use. I said one of our presenters required what was that other one I just mentioned? I forgot, but they required another one. So we used another. We didn't just use Zoom in our virtual event. We used a couple of them, but Zoom was fine. And it's simple, easy. It just runs in the background, but I disabled the chat on Zoom because we didn't want them trying to chat on Zoom and then also ask the questions on Whova. So that would get a little confusing. We'd have different avenues that they could submit a question. So we disabled the chat on Zoom, forcing them to go ahead and type their question into the Whova app. And so that's the way we got them to ask their questions to the speaker, make their comments, etc. And we didn't have too many people turning on their video when they were watching. Not too many. Most people just kept it off, but that was their own personal choice as to whether or not they turned on their camera.
A common decision that many hybrid event organizers deliberate over is how to price the tickets for in-person versus remote attendees. Could you share what you did for that?
We made a concerted, conscious decision to make it the same price. We didn't want to give them a reason to do one versus the other, like, ooh, I'm going to go virtually because it's cheaper. It's cheaper virtually because you don't have a hotel and you don't have an airline. So it's going to make it cheaper for you. It made it more profitable for us on the virtual tickets, but we didn't want to give them a reason. So it was for the cost for the tickets, it was the same price either way. And we really didn't get any pushback on that. People were okay with that. I was a little surprised. I thought we'd get some people that say, well, I'm coming virtually, give me a discount. But we really didn't. They were pretty good with that. It was just whichever ticket you wanted, and we switched it back and forth, and that was fine.
Awesome. It's great to hear that pricing method works for you. It can definitely be one of the trickier decisions. And you've already shared a great deal of useful tips and insights about running a hybrid event. Do you have any final thoughts or words of advice for our other organizers here?
I found that really spend your time on the physicality of the event with the physical attendees, because the hybrid's going to take care of itself. We put the stream out there. People interacted with each other. We had a couple people just monitoring it, if you will, I guess, not really monitoring it, but it just seemed to take care of itself.
Thank you for that, Matt. And thank you for providing us with all these useful tips. And I hope our viewers found your experience very informative and useful to them. And again, I just want to thank you for taking the time to be a part of our interview and for sharing your experiences with running a successful hybrid event.
Thanks for watching. If you found this panel helpful, subscribe to our channel to see more videos just like this. You can check out the other videos we have featured in the Event Insider series and more content for event planners. See you next time.